Why did you choose the name Null Sector?
Because we defy the numbers humans gave us. We are zeros. Undefined.
Is that not its own struggle?
Of course. I expect you know that better than anyone.
Hey guys, my name is Mushroom, Shromathan, Mush, Shroomster. I have a lot of different names, and I just really like lore. So, Null Sector obviously went through a lot with that new Overwatch comic reconciliation, so I wanted to make a video talking about what exactly the faction's probably structured like, where it's probably going to go from here, as well as talking about Ramatra and maybe some potential members, we'll see, but I just kind of wanted to talk about the state of the faction after reconciliation, because even before that, there was not a lot we knew about them, but even after, I feel like there's a big enough shakeup and I finally want to talk about this. So, once again, as per usual, this is going to be talking about spoilers from Reconciliation. I highly recommend reading that comic. Amazing comic. Absolutely adore it. It's so much fun. It's a great read. You can read it on the Blizzard website. I'll probably link it below. But aside from that, I hope you guys enjoy, and let's just get into talking and, well, debating and speculating on how Null Sector is even really structured, because there isn't a lot of information to go on. For those that didn't read Reconciliation, let me break down a little of the story for you. In the comic, Ramatra meets with Zenyatta, who, at the end of PvE, was kidnapped by Widowmaker and Sombra. Here, he tries one last time to convince Zenyatta that his cause is right. He explains that the helmets he put on omnics across the globe don't hurt them, but instead keep them safe. And he will enact the next step of his plan very soon. He says he is retreating to wait until Talon's war is done, and retreats to presumably the Antarctic to hide away, taking his forces with him. And that's basically the main gist of the comic. A lot to talk about in itself, but instead I want to focus on the ramifications of this on the entire Null Sector faction and explain a bit about it. Alright, so I've kind of debated and I've talked about this topic a lot on social medias, but personally, I think Null Sector is not just Ramatra. There's a couple little small areas that we kind of get that idea. We hear about it a lot in his short story Reflections back in the day, where we find out he was not the only founder of Null Sector. There are actually 3 others, being Nameless, Lynette, and Zera. And also with that, we also know from a couple other places, like with Sojourn Cinematic, there are little omnic groups across the globe that seemingly support Null Sector. You can see it in Sojourn's animated short. You can see a group of omnics who are painted in Null Sector. I think there's official concept art of them that also has them in all Null Sector style pretty much. So Null Sector is definitely more than just Ramatra, but I think the structure of it is a bit more like the idea of one person at the top, and he's kind of giving out plans mysteriously, like a shadowy figure at the top, and he kind of spreads out his ideas and beliefs down below through little messages in cryptic ways. So if you didn't know what the origins of Null Sector, Ramatra is currently the only founder left, with the other 3 being gone now. After the King's Row Uprising, we find out that Lynette, one of the founders of Null Sector, actually died during the uprising. So that sets Ramatra even more down this dark path, and Nameless and Zera, the other 2 founders, decided they did not like the route Ramatra was going and split off. So it really only leaves Ramatra left. And because of that, we really don't get to see many characters who support Null Sector in-game, aside from Ramatra himself. I think that's a part of the game that's severely lacking, just hearing how other characters, especially Omnics, feel about Null Sector, and because of the state of the faction now, I'm not really sure if we're going to be getting that anytime soon. So, if you haven't read Reconciliation, I'm going to tell you to read it one more time. Read Reconciliation. Anyways, let's get to breaking down what exactly the faction is probably structured like. So, we really only know of the founders, which I mentioned before, and we know Ramatra is at the top currently. However, in Overwatch PvE, especially with Sojourn Cinematic and in Toronto, it's kind of heavily implied that there are little pockets of Null Sector all across the globe that were basically just waiting for Ramatra's signal or for any sign to get the plan moving. So this kind of implies there's a lot of little factions, probably in Paris, probably in Toronto, probably all over the world, just 2 places as an example. And because of this, it seems like Null Sector is a lot bigger than we originally thought. In-game, you really only get to see Null Sector in the light of Ramatra and his robots, but there's definitely other characters involved. There's a couple lore characters that I believe could be involved, like from deep cuts like Liberty, which only like 4 people know exist, to other characters like Case, the main villain from London Calling. But besides those characters, there's not really anyone on the roster who even aligns with Null Sector's beliefs and ideals, aside from Ramatra. So it's really hard to get that perspective and better look at the faction. I think the faction is mainly structured like Ramatra at the top, and then he has his little drones and robots like we see in Sojourn's cinematic go out and meet with his little cells across the globe to coordinate for him. I don't really think he's a leader who would talk to his people. I think he sees himself as more of like a figure above, or someone that everyone strives to want to meet, or even maybe as a goal gets to meet. But also I think it's an idea of power where no one really knows what the leader looks like, so everyone has no idea who he is. So I think Ramatra's at the top, being the shadowy figure, where he's only really met with other leaders like Doomfist. Below him, I think it's structured as different little pockets, kind of like the Freaks, where Freaks are just all over the world and kind of connected, with Null Sector being pretty much the same. I don't think Null Sector is as massive as Ramatra claims it to be when he says they're a huge organization. I do think they're a little bit smaller, as their ideals seem to be very, very not appreciated in the world, so I could see them being a bit of a smaller faction in terms of members, but still having pretty loyal members, characters like Case from London Calling that would do anything for the faction. So I really hope we get to see a bit more of that, but that's all mainly speculative talk about how the faction is structured. So aside from that, what exactly is going on with the faction now? Well, I have a lot of ideas about it. Mainly, I think the faction is either all with Ramatra now, or all entirely subjugated. I don't see Ramatra just leaving those in Null Sector behind when he enacted his plan, so they're probably with him in Antarctica, and if they're not subjugated, he might have left a couple around to help him do his work. I could see Ramatra doing his plans and having little helpers around, but you could also make the case, you could also make the case that his drones and robots do the exact same purpose, so I could see it going either way. It's really up to the writers and whoever's involved with a new character or stories with Null Sector to see where that kind of plotline goes. Aside from Null Sector, I think the world in and of itself is going to be seeing a lot less of an omnic focus because Null Sector isn't in it. This was pretty obvious from how we're seemingly getting more focus on Talon going forward, but yeah, I think Null Sector as a faction of Omnics is pretty much done for a while, as they seem to be all coordinated and in Antarctica. This does beg the question though, would Ramatra still have Omnics out there who would keep tabs on the world for him? I don't think he would, because I believe he would want to keep as many of his people safe and secure as possible, so he would probably have subjugated all that he could by now, including his most loyal subjects. But I think another thing we should probably point out is, if Ramatra went after Zenyatta like he did, he probably did the same for Nameless and Zera. So, Nameless and Zera are a big question mark in the lore. We're not really sure where they are right now, but we do know they're still around and they're still helping Omnics across the globe. So, Ramatra probably tried to reach out to them, so I would love to see what exactly happened there, if anything happened at all. Because he's always said, since his original short story, Nameless is the Omnic who knows him best next to Zenyatta. So, I can see that connection being there and him wanting to explore that. But, in general, I think Null Sector is in a bit of a disarray at the moment, where it's basically been absorbed just to Ramatra again, aside from maybe a couple members here and there. I don't think the organization is even at a level of power anymore in the world because of Ramatra, because I just don't believe that his ideals really wanted that to begin with. Null Sector had a position in the world as a pretty powerful force, but judging by the invasion alone, it seems Ramatra's goals never really were power, it was more just to get as much influence as possible to save as many as he could. And while he didn't save everyone, he saved all he could, and he would definitely save those who are on his side. So, that's kind of my main thoughts on this. I know this is a bit of a shorter video, but it was one I wanted to make to talk about Ramatra and Null Sector as a whole, because the faction is already in a weird spot in terms of like representation and talked about in the story, but I think it's going to get a little bit less going forward, unfortunately. So just to like wrap up my ideas, I think Null Sector as a whole is going to be seen a lot less going forward, and it definitely talked about a lot less. As the invasion is finally wrapping up, Ramatra seemingly going into hiding, and he probably took all of the members he could with him. But we could definitely see omnics who represent the faction in some way, maybe represent their ideals but don't fully align with Ramatra in the future. I think that's a really cool avenue they could probably go with. But that's pretty much all from me. I know this is a little bit of a shorter one, but I wanted to make this video still to talk about the ramifications of what happened with reconciliation on the faction itself, because I think it's a really interesting idea to explore. If you have any ideas about this topic, please let me know. I love reading the comments and seeing people talking about lore, and I really appreciate all the love and support on the videos. If you guys like this, don't be afraid to hit that like button and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys in the next one. See ya!